Hello everyone, Devant this side. So in this video we are going to implement a search API for the music recommender. In the previous videos we had implemented other APIs, the music API which was created to fetch recommended songs using our model, and the image API which was used to scrape images for that particular song. Now in this video we are going to see how to implement the search API. I have already written the code, so I'm going to explain you the code in this video. We are not going to write it from scratch, but I would highly recommend that if you are trying to create this project on your own, try implementing this code by your own self. So let's start. Basically, to implement search API, we are going to use a service called Redis. Now, Redis is usually used to store cache memory. The basic idea behind Redis is to use cache as a particular as a database. Now, to set up Redis on your machine, you can use Redis CLI, Redis Docker services. But for this video, I'm using Redis Cloud Service. So this is how a dashboard for Redis Cloud Services look like. And clicking on the connect button here under the endpoint, you can find Redis client here. Redis client is a separate application which you might need to install in your device, but you can also use it without installing it as well. So here you can select your client out of many backend languages. I selected Python because we are implementing it in Python. So you will get your credentials here. It's very easy to actually create an account. The free tier service provides you a limit up to 30 MB to store database. Now, to set up it, we are going to import Redis, and then we are going to call the Redis function providing our basic details here. Now for security purposes, I have hidden all those parameters from here. Now this parameter basically is db0. So this is database number 0, which we are going to use. Now when you use Docker in your local machine and you install a Redis image, you get access to using several databases which are numbered usually from 0 to 1, 2, 9, 3, 4, 5, like this. So you can use them. And I guess the limit is 100 MB, but for cloud service the limit would be 30 MB for free tier. Now there are two ways to implement Redis search here. There are various kinds of facilities which Redis provides us with. There is something like Redis Cache, Redis JSON, and Redis Search is one of them. Now there are two ways we can implement Redis Search. So firstly, we will discuss the basic method by which we can use Redis Search here. So from here, I'll explain this line a little bit later in the video. Now, this rs variable contains our Redis Search client here. So basically, this ft function is full text. It means full text. All it takes is an index. Now, in accordance to this index, all our cache values would be mapped. Now here I have defined a key prefix. All the data which we are going to store would be stored based on this key prefix. Now I'm going to add a number, a numeric value against this key prefix to make all the entries unique. Now this particular while loop is going to check that if we already have data in our cache or not. If we do not have cache, then we are going to populate it using this function load data from CSV. Otherwise, we are directly going to search it in the cache. Whatever our query parameters are giving us with the keyword. Now, to check basically, there is a function called scan. Now it works on big O and time complexity and searches through a particular number of entries. Now for those entries, I've used db size here. So r.db size basically provides us with the size of entire database, and we can search all the entries which have a particular key prefix. So here my key prefix song colon. So this particular statement will scan all the data that is in our Redis cache based on this key prefix. If we have other data with some other key prefix, it's not going to be counted there. Now we can basically get length of all those values, all that data which is already there with this particular key prefix. But the purpose of this particular function is just to figure out that do we have that cache memory populated with our songs or not. So this function will run and it will scan for all the values which have this particular key prefix. Now to implement Redis search, we usually need to create an index. Index is basically those values on which our search is going to be performed on. Now I want to search on the basis of name and the artist name, the song name and the artist name. So my schema will contain text field for name and artist. Now there are various kinds of fields also. There is a tag field. If you want to search exactly on the basis of that full text, not like partially, like if there is an entry which is yellow. Now your query parameters would need to be complete yellow, that complete letter, that complete word. Now that you would need to define as a tag field. So it's going to search yellow a complete word. But for example, if I need to search YELL, so it's going to give me results for all those entries which contain YELL. I hope it's clear. Now, based on this schema, we create an index here and we give it a prefix. Now, all those values, all that data which has this particular key prefix would be, we will implement RediSearch on those data. So now load data from CSV function. Basically, if you remember, we had a CSV file. So from that CSV file, we are going to read all the individual data and add it to our Redis cache. Now here you can see that I had implemented this song key prefix with an integer value which increments whenever this loop runs. Now usually what happens is that if the data is already there in the database, an exception is thrown. Now whenever it tries to find out some data which is already there in the database, an exception would be thrown. If that data is not there, we will simply add that. To add that, there is a simple function r.json.set. So we are basically setting our data as JSON object. We are also going to print it meanwhile. Now the next thing which we implement here is this search function. Now this is simply going to search for that particular query. Now there are several ways to search for that keyword. You can use fuzzy search. Now let me show you how the fuzzy search works. So basically it's just like our wildcard operator. So this query function is also imported from our Redis only. To implement the search, our rs object which we created using that ft function, we use the search function here and give our query as a parameter to it. Now this will fetch us all the results, and those results we are going to send as a response. But the thing to mind here is that those results we need to serialize. Now to serialize those results, we have used this particular function for that. We are going to map all the data and serialize it individually. Now this particular data which we get from that search function, we usually get our total number of entries which we found and all the result array. Now the other way to do that was basically to use a Python library called RediSearch. Now this is different from Redis. Here what the object we created was using this R, the Redis object. Redis search is something else. Okay, so Redis search is separate library basically. So you see here it has client, text field, and query function. Now here what we do is we use that particular client function. Now we use the client function to create a particular index. It's called the song name, and we need to specify our connection object as well. Now we are using basically this ready setup here. So in our CO double N this parameter, this R object is going to be placed so that it can identify from which database does it need to search all the data. The other steps are more or less the same only. Other than that, we are just, if the key exists, we simply create our index using this function rset.createIndex, and simply we have to define the schema. So this can also be implemented, and the other difference lies in adding the document. So there is one thing to consider here. When we are using Redis as a cache storage, we use the r.set method. But for RediSearch, that particular library, it also has its own cache memory. So the rsearch object, in that rsearch object, we can add document. So here I do not need to specify a particular index like song colon. We can add data here, and let me comment it. We can search it all using this particular query rsearch.search. So there is no much difference in this. So I particularly prefer using the basic method because we do not need to install any other library for that. Now let's try to see it in action. Now what will happen here is it doesn't have song yet. Maybe it had. So earlier, while implementing this API, I populated the database with all the songs. But don't worry, I'll show you how this will work. So basically, I searched LinkedIn. So I got all the songs with artist name Linkin Park. Now, for example, if I use Eminem, Eminem, with all the songs with artist Eminem. Now, for example, let's just put here Street. Now, Street is not basically my particularly favorite song, but you see here we get the songs where this uh, street is the keyword basically, right? Now let me show you one more thing, that if we do not have any data in our database already, then what will happen? So to erase all the data in our database, all the data, not particularly with uh, key name with key prefix song colon, it will flush all the database. Now for the other method which we were using, that rsearch method, we need to implement rsearch drop index method as well, so that the index which we created also drops. But here we do not need to drop that index because there will be no data, so it's not going to search from anywhere. Rather, it would try to fill in the entry for that data. So let's try to run this. Now here it is going to load some. Let me check if anything happens. Let's try to implement it once again. Mm, what does it say? Index error. Maybe we did a blunder. Okay, so I figured out the blunder we did here. So basically the count value needs to be some other number other than the r.db size. We need to figure it out why it happened here. If you can figure it out, I would like that you comment down why did this happen. Now, let's basically call our API. It takes time when we are trying to populate the data. See, all those data entries are being populated in this. So this takes a little bit time because we have thousands of entries. Now to omit all the songs which were like old songs, I implemented this condition. Like where year is, if the year is smaller than 2000, like all the songs which were before 2000, we would not try to populate them in our database. So we are going to omit them. Now why? Because it might take an entire day to fill that data in here. Now I don't know if you use Docker for that or other Redis services which are other than the cloud one. I don't know the speed on how do they populate the entire data, but for cloud it takes a little time. You can see it's populating it per second. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. I hope you liked it and I hope you try to implement it on your own. So see you in the next one. Thank you very much.